Marcus,
Sean,
uh, send me one Bitcoin. I'll send you two back.
sure, coming right up. Can you hold up your QR code, please?
Yeah. We're recording right now. Okay. Welcome everybody. This is Bitcoiner's Guide, episode 20, episode 20 already. Wow. This is the show that we wish we would have had when we first started learning about Bitcoin. So we made it for you. We're your host, Big Sean Harris, and Plan Marcus. And we're in the same trade as always. That is Bitcoin only. Stay away from the scams, stay away from the scammers, and stay away from the grifters. To timestamp and price stamp, currently it is Monday, July 4th. Happy Independence Day, everybody. If you're in the United States, and if you're not, well, good luck. It is 11:34 a.m. and the current price of Bitcoin is $19,945, up 4.27% in the last 24 hours. So Bitcoin's going up right now. It's about to cross 20K. We're having a little price pump, a little freedom pump on this day. The markets are closed, but the Bitcoin markets never close. They trade 24/7. It's a beautiful thing.
The markets are open here, Sean. No problem. Don't worry. In Europe, we keep the markets open on the 4th of July.
No one knows about no one knows about the European stock market. They don't know the Netherlands. What's the Netherlands stock market? No one even knows about that.
That's where it all started. It's the first stock market in the world, dude. We literally built the New York Stock Exchange for you guys.
That is true. The modern banking, we can blame modern central banking on the Dutch. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yes.
Thanks for that.
Hey, and on another note, I'd like to congratulate ourselves on our first sponsorship for the show, Bitcoin Kindergarten. And I'll also throw in a little shout out to Simply Bitcoin. Love those guys over there as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Nice work, Sean.
Yeah, we didn't actually get sponsored, by the way. We're still unsponsored and we're unsullied by sponsors. That's how we roll around here. We do not bend the knee for any sponsors, or maybe the sponsors don't bend the knee for us, one or the other.
And more importantly, we won't shill you any promo code to get a free $100 on any shitcoin casino either.
No, that's not gonna happen.
Like that other Dutch guy does.
The other plan, your alter ego, your sock puppet account, Plan B.
Right. Yeah.
All right, let's get into what we got planned for today. We got a really exciting show, everybody. And for all of those watching, which is a Bitcoiner's Guide dozen, we got a good show. And we wanted to get started with the Bitcoiner's Guide tip of the week, brought to you by the Halving Party in El Salvador coming up in 2024. The best and the only place for the halving to enjoy the halving party. Be there or be lame. So getting into the Bitcoiner's Guide tip of the week, this week, we wanted to talk about Bitcoin being freedom money. I thought it was pretty good because today is Independence Day. It's the time to be ungovernable. And that is what Bitcoin is. So we wanted to talk a little bit about what Bitcoin is and why it's more than just a number go up play, but it's actually a freedom go up play. That actually comes from Alex Gladstein, and whatever opinions you may have on him, I thought that was a really good saying from him. As you get more Bitcoin, your freedom increases, and it is the exit from the current system. So there's a lot of things going on in the world today. There's inflation going on. We're going to get into inflation going on in certain countries. There's certain countries that have farmers that are running amok because the government's running a bigger muck in that country. But if they only knew to not use the money that their government gives to them, then they could truly be free. And I think that is one of the things that a lot of us miss is you can't reach true freedom and true financial reliability until you have money that cannot be controlled by any person, any entity, or any government. There's only one money out there that is like that, and that is Bitcoin. There's no altcoins that do that. There's no decentralized altcoin out there because they don't have the sufficient decentralization of nodes and of miners. And that's where Bitcoin wins. Bitcoin cannot be controlled. Marcus, would you own, here's a question, would you own Bitcoin if it didn't go up in price, if it stayed at 20,000 forever, would you still own it?
I would still own it. So it'd be 20,000. Would I have bought it at 20,000?
Sure, you bought it at 20,000. You're buying it right now. You have no Bitcoin. You know everything that you know about it. The only thing that we take out of it, we take out the number go up.
That sounds like a stable coin. Sounds like a shit coin to me.
Yeah, maybe it is.
I think number go up is a critical part of Bitcoin. I mean, I still see Bitcoin as Satoshi hacked our biology, right?
Yes.
So to be truthful, I probably wouldn't own it if it would stay stable at 20K forever.
Ooh, that's a hefty take. I think I would still own it. I just wouldn't be all in. I would have a little bit.
Yeah, I completely get where you're going, right? From the freedom aspect. I mean, but the beauty of Bitcoin is it has all these components.
Yeah, the 21. What makes it so impactful is the 21 million and the 21 million cap. And that's what makes the number go up, technology work. And I think that is like the freedom, you're free from inflation. So I think those things are true, right? Like it's not just freedom from control, but it's also freedom from inflation, which is the biggest silent tax that most don't even realize. So I think that's true. Like that, it's hard to separate the 21 million cap from Bitcoin because that is the ultimate thing about it, is that it's capped at 21 million.
Yeah. So another thing, if it would stay 20,000 what, US dollars, but we know the US dollar like is inflationary. Yes. So no, I wouldn't own it if it would stay stable at $20,000. That would mean I'd lose purchasing power, probably about 80% in 10 to 20 years, you know? So
yeah.
But another thing, what really makes it freedom money, of course, is that, you know, if you look at the US dollar, it's not freedom money anymore, I would say. You know, the minute, especially this year, they literally weaponized the dollar by cutting whole countries off from the SWIFT system. Yeah, then it doesn't it's not, you know, money has several functions.
Yes.
If you want to add a function of cutting people off from it or tying information to it or using it as spyware, or then it becomes less functional money to others or the people you're trying to beat. So if a money wants to survive, then it's probably better for that money to not, you know, have any country be able to restrict it in any way or control it in whatever way. So yeah, it's money for your enemies, for your friends. It's just money that doesn't care. It's an open network that everybody under every condition can always use without being extra taxed or burdened to do so. So to me, that's the real freedom part. It's free from control and manipulation, and it's free to enter into and transact with, and free to leave from as well. That's that's something that's important as well. You don't have to use it. You know, it's completely free.
Yeah, I think that's such a big point, is the way that the dollar is used nowadays. It is a censorable money, you can be censored off the dollar network. You can have your payments blocked or reversed or changed. And that's what's so great about Bitcoin is the transactions are uncensorable. You can make that transaction. No one can stop you. No one can take your Bitcoin coin from you. No one can seize your Bitcoin. No one can freeze your Bitcoin. And that is what makes it freedom money. And with the dollar or the euro or any other fiat currency, all those things are possible. You can have your bank account seized. You can have it frozen. There's a lot of different things that can happen when you use the money that's issued by your government. But when you have a money that's created by the people, for the people, then you get that separation of money and state. And that is the ultimate freedom. And then you
Imagine
can, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
You're
I
good.
thought you were going into your final role there.
No.
I was just thinking because we're comparing it to like the US dollar now, but I think it was just last week or 2 weeks ago that Fed Chief Jerome Powell, he mentioned CBDCs again, that they're gonna be, so you slowly see this narrative of CBDCs in the US. First it was like, oh yeah, Europe's looking into it. We have no plans of doing anything with the CBDC. Europe is doubling down. They're even announcing dates. Now the United States is saying, oh, we're going to experiment and look into it as well.
Yes.
So there's a shift. Okay, it doesn't mean it's going to come, but we see where this seems to be heading. I mean, Europe is definitely headed that way. China is already there. So what will our money look like in the future, right? I mean, that's pretty scary. Will it be more free, equally free, or less free, in your opinion, the dollar?
It'll be less free. And that's obvious. It continues to get less and less free, especially with the CBDC. And that's, in my opinion, Bitcoin's biggest battle or biggest fight will be against CBDCs, because Bitcoin is taking down central banks. And what's the ultimate last tool of a central bank? CBDC. That's the last tool. That's the last reach. And so it'll be the most polarizing opposites. And I think in my mind, a CBDC is the most polarizing opposite of Bitcoin. You have surveillance, you have control, it's centralized, it's issued by one single issuer, and then you have Bitcoin, and it's open, it's for anyone to use. No one can stop it.
But right now it's already like censorable and polarized, right? I mean, the Federal Reserve or the Treasury.
Yeah.
Right. So what is it? Why is a CBDC less free, according to you, compared to the dollar today?
Because you can still transact. So right now you can still use cash, which is more free. Like those cash payments, those are uncensorable. What happens with cash payments is they get debased through inflation. And in my opinion, I think we're going to get to the point where we see so much inflation that you have to have UBI, universal basic income, for like your average person. They're going to need that monthly or bi-monthly check from the government. And that's what we're seeing. Like in California, they just came out and said that they're gonna pass out, they're looking at passing out checks to like millions of citizens in California to combat the woes of inflation. And so they don't even realize that by printing money and handing out more money to combat inflation, that they're causing more inflation. And maybe they do realize that, and that's like, it's a slavery cycle. When you depend on your government or you depend on someone else for your money, then you are owned by that person or that government. And the moment that you tell them no, then you're cut off. So at that point, you're controlled by the CBDC, because there's one issuer. They can tell you what you can and can't do. And if you disagree with them or you live your life in a different way, then you can be cut off. And by being cut off, then you starve to death, or you starve, or your kids don't eat. And so then you just do whatever the entity that's issuing the CBDC tells you to do, because you need to eat. And that's, in my opinion, why it is more centralized. It's less freedom than the current system that we're in right now.
Yeah, well said, especially that last piece. I completely agree with. And also imagine if you're like, maybe not your middle class US citizen, right? Imagine you're like somebody from El Salvador trying to make a living in the States. I don't want to like stereotype anybody here, right? But let's say, you know, you're working and you're getting paid in cash, right? You don't have a bank account. With CBDC, or the highly CBDC world, you have to be able to get a bank account, which often requires some form of ID. So if you're staying in a country illegal, I'm not promoting like illegal or anything, but it is a fact of life in most countries that there are a lot of, you know, undocumented people in a country, and because the money is still reasonable compared to where it's going. Can't believe I'm saying this, right? But the CBDC right. is, in my opinion, anyway. Yeah, I can't even imagine. They're the ones that are going to get hit first and the hardest, because they won't be able to participate anymore. If there's no more cash, and you always need like a bank account.
Yeah. Yes.
But I also believe something will replace cash. So even if the United States would remove cash altogether, but we have Bitcoin, so it doesn't make much sense going too deep into that. Yeah, which is the perfect cash, because it is open. And some people will say, well, you also need to get a Bitcoin wallet or some kind of hardware. Yeah, but that's just technology. That's hardware that anybody can get. It's different than having to get a bank account where you have to go to a bank, show them ID, and get approved. It's the approval that's that makes it bad money, because that's where it becomes a closed system, right?
Yeah.
That's not where, oh, I'm sorry, you're not from here. No, we can't open a bank for you. Can't bank account for you. Sorry, try it somewhere else. You know. Yeah. And everywhere you go, you get the same message. Okay, we're sorry, but you can't partake in our economy. You know.
So and what's interesting is that makes Bitcoin. It opens up the world for people who, if they want to move to a different country, then they're not relying upon the banking system inside a certain country. And so then it makes it so people, in my opinion, I think people could be more productive, because if you're held out of a banking system, then you rely on criminal activity to make a living. And I know there's other laws and regulations that you have to comply with, right? Like you might have to get a work visa or whatever you might have to get. But there are places where if you could just get paid in Bitcoin instead of having to get a bank account, then maybe you could get a job that's not paying you to do illegal things, right? So that's part of it. Is it also helps facilitate, in my opinion, Bitcoin helps facilitate not only just like a more free economy, but a more honest economy as well. But I mean, I could be wrong there. Maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, maybe one last point. It's like whatever authority is there has control over, the permission-based society, right? So whatever CBDC is there, somebody, the government or a dictator or, whatever, whoever is in charge controls that system. And that means that it's going to be very hard to be critical of that authority if they control your money and your system, So it's like this power that amasses more power and becomes more powerful, and people become more dependent. So you'll never, if there's ever a situation where it turns into a dictatorship, it will be very hard. Now you're trapped inside this monetary system that you can't fight, and that the guy you're trying to fight controls. So that's, I think when you're talking about freedom money, where you're going to always be free your money is always going to be free from any dictator or somebody who's acting against you. So I think that's pretty powerful stuff.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Great. So Bitcoin is freedom money. Enjoy your 4th of July, everybody. We're going to try to get this. I'm going to try to edit this and get this out tonight or maybe tomorrow morning, so we can release it on the 4th of July. Hopefully, we'll see. Moving on. Marcus and I mean, we got a ton of things that we can talk about. And where should we start, Marcus? Where do you want to start?
How about what we have? We just go through it and we say, we just name the topic and no longer than X amount of seconds, and we move on.
Okay, you want to do that?
Yeah. So which one you want to start with?
Let's start.
Okay, well, all right. Well, before we do that, like ultra fast section, I just want to quickly hit up Nick Carter, which Sean over here had a little exchange with.
That's true. I did have an exchange.
Nick Carter thought that Sean over here was an anon.
Yep.
I never laughed so hard. One of the funniest moments. Obviously, it's not funny, right? Because Nick Carter, whoever doesn't know the guy, has been a massive contributor to Bitcoin, and especially in fighting the whole energy FUD that's been put out there. He's written some amazing articles, and so well deserved. He got a lot of praise for it. We put him on a pedestal, and now he invested into something. I can't even go too deep into it because honestly, I haven't done my homework to really dig through it, but apparently it has something to do with chain analysis and shitcoinery, of which you can expect Bitcoiners to be critical of course. So I don't think that was a surprise to him. But what really surprised me is how he lashed back at the community and just shown a complete meltdown and this different side of him. And that's kind of sad to see, right? It always hurts when you see like one of the Bitcoin proudest and stuff, just melt down and just completely fall to like fiat nonsense, but also, just attacking Bitcoiners and attacking Bitcoin ethos because he's trying to protect his interests.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Nick
in
Carter's...
between all those fireworks and popcorn, Sean reached out to him, which I thought was fairly, like you didn't call him names or anything. You were just like posing. I don't know if you maybe you can say it, but then it was just funny.
It's funny because
that he was saying that you were anon.
Yeah, he's getting on me for calling him out, and then I got Dieter Bob tweeting at me like, "Oh, stop licking his butthole," I'm like, dude, I can call people out how I want to call people out. I'm not licking his butthole. First of all, to say that Nick Carter like hasn't done a lot for Bitcoin would be a lie, right? You gotta, this is how I always have been. You gotta give credit where credit's due. Give credit where credit's due, but then call people out where they deserve to be called out, right? That's what I would want. For me personally, I want people to give me credit where credit's due, but then call me out when I need to be called out. And maybe he thinks he needs to call me out for that, which is totally fine. Like, great. And my whole point was, look, Nick has done a lot. He's written a ton of articles that are FUD busting Bitcoin mining and energy, things that people are saying about how much energy Bitcoin's expending and all this BS. And he's written a ton about that. But then at the same time, you think, okay, if he's gone down the rabbit hole, like, then he should be able to understand that this crypto infrastructure and Web3 BS isn't amounting to anything, that it's Wall Street on blockchain. That was my whole point, was that all the crypto, all these new things, I mean, Ethereum was created with JP Morgan with a 70% pre-mine. Like, it's literally Wall Street on blockchain. It's another way to sucker in unsuspecting noobs. And they mention Bitcoin, they say, here's Bitcoin, buy my altcoin. Here's Bitcoin, buy my mining stock. I like Bitcoin, buy this fund of crypto, right? And I think that is the whole issue with Nick, is he's saying, look, if you don't think I've done enough for Bitcoin, then you don't know me, right? It's like, yes, we understand that you've done a lot for Bitcoin, and that's great, but it doesn't matter, right? Like, it doesn't matter how much you've done for Bitcoin. It matters what you're doing. And it doesn't even matter, like, in my mind, crypto is the antithesis of Bitcoin. It's the opposite of Bitcoin. And so how do you have one foot in one thing and one foot in the other once you know enough? And to me, it's just like an ego thing where he wants to get more money. He knows that he can get more money in these other altcoin projects. He can flip them quickly, get in, get out, and be on his way, and then turn it into more Bitcoin. And
yeah, I completely agree.
fine.
That's what it's all about, dude. You know,
Yes.
like human nature is a bitch. I'm sorry to say,
Yes.
right? Like we're all susceptible to greed. And the minute you get like a following or something, you think like, hey, I can monetize this. And you're like, oh, but they're gonna hate me. But you know, if the upside gets big enough, people crumble and they reach out for that, you know, for that bonus, and they always go for greed. I mean, you see it at every layer. And that's why you cannot put a money printer with government
Government's
either,
hands.
because the temptation is just too big. It might go good for a little bit. In the end, people cannot help themselves but misuse free money, right? So sorry for Nick, but you know, it's just, for me, it's more like the way he went out, man. It's just like he just crashed and burned. And like this whole week has been crazy, right? I mean, like, he was an investor in Castle Island Venture Island Castle, or some castle
He's a
fairy
founder. He's a
tale
founder.
investment fund or founder.
Yeah.
You know, and they got hit. There's probably contagion in the market. You know, like we've seen Celsius go down, we've seen Luna go down. Now BlockFi went down. You know, like all these companies that thought they were running a tight ship, and all these people investing in it, they were like, no, these are good people, and you know, you can trust them to cover their asses and to have enough assets backing it up.
Yeah.
And he was calling out like a bunch of people idiots for being critical of BlockFi just a couple of weeks ago, right? And now BlockFi is just completely destroyed as well. So yeah, it just goes, I mean, another lesson, right? Beyond even like noobs in the space, like even like people like you and me, we look up to a lot of people in the space often. At least I do. I'll speak to myself, you know, like if I look at like a Preston Fish, you know, it's like, okay,
Yeah,
this is a smart guy, you know, he seems to be critical.
Dude, you and Preston Fish had a little tiff too. So it's like,
oh yeah, let's not get into that. That's like ancient history by now. But yeah, like don't put anybody on a pedestal, and yeah, it's pretty crazy, man.
yeah, I agree. I think like to have heroes is not like you're gonna slay your hero. Like you need to be your own hero when it comes to money. And you should, like, I agree. There's no reason to put someone up on a pedestal. It's cool to be inspired by people. You know, I feel like there were times that I was inspired by certain articles that Nick put out, and it helped me understand a little bit more about Bitcoin, which is great. But I also think that you should hold yourself accountable, right? What we're looking, and this is what we just talked about, Bitcoin is freedom money. What is the purpose of focusing on crypto and crypto infrastructure when you have Bitcoin right here, looking us in the face, in the environment, the macro environment, the geopolitical environment that we're looking at the same time? Bitcoin is the play. Bitcoin is the thing that's most important right now. The other things, maybe you make money in them, and that's great, that's fine. But what is the point of it when all that money can be siphoned away from you, when it can be frozen, it can be seized, it can be stolen from you in inflation, the founders can dump on you? What's the point? We're looking for something to be a base layer that can't be manipulated. And then once we get that, once we win that, we haven't won. Bitcoin has not won yet. And that's what I keep trying to tell people. Bitcoin has an early lead. The game is far from over. And so to think that you can just sit around and pump crypto and think that that's okay, that's going to help Bitcoin out, I disagree. I don't subscribe to that thought. But that is what I like about it, is that he's free to do that. I'm free to criticize. I'm free to call him out for that as well. And then he can be free to call me back out, right? Like, I think having the freedom to spend your money however you want to spend it is great. But I should also be allowed, if I feel like someone is spending their money or spending their time on something that's counterproductive, then I should be allowed to call them out on that as well. I should be free to call them out on it. And then they can be free to call me out or call me a name or whatever, which is perfectly fine. But this is the type of freedom that I like, not the freedom where there's one central entity that controls everything. So is Nick free to do this? Of course. Should he be allowed to do whatever he wants to do with his money? Yes, he should be, right? He should be. But I also think that he should have paid more attention and should be taking Bitcoin more seriously in the environment, the geopolitical environment that we're in, as well as the macro environment that we're in. And I think it's gonna take a hit on his reputation. Maybe I'm wrong. So that's the way I look at it right now. And maybe that'll change in the future, but I don't think so.
Yeah, let's go over some of the other news over here, Sean.
Yeah.
Some funny, let's go over this quick, like some funny inflation. I mean, how can I say it's funny? But just to show some inflation rates around the world, we have Turkey, 78%.
Yep.
That's quite a bit. You had some numbers on Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
I see Lebanon had 211%. 211%. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Zimbabwe is reading 96 over here.
No, Zimbabwe is 191.
That's crazy.
In June.
Yeah.
Year over year. 191. Turkey's at 70, 78.62 for June. It's pretty insane.
Yeah. One of the big blowouts is going to be when Tether is also going to collapse. Tether, isn't it like a stable coin to the US dollar?
Yeah, I mean, all those
in these countries, because I'm thinking like these countries that have all this high inflation, there are big users of, and I'm going to say cryptocurrency for a reason here, not just Bitcoin, but you know, if you look at like the Bitcoin dominance chart, which is also a flawed metric, but you see that the dominance is not really going up a lot, mostly due to these stable coins that have increasing market cap. So a lot of these people, you know, they're looking at Bitcoin, they're like, well, Bitcoin just crashed like 70%. Well, maybe I should go into a stable coin instead, right? But ultimately, over the long term, I don't know when this will happen, of course, not financial advice, but we're gonna start seeing some massive inflation numbers in the G7 as well. And then you can wonder, okay, well, then it doesn't make sense going into a stable coin anymore if the thing it's pegged to is starting to show some massive inflation. So yeah, ultimately we know which coin is the last one.
What do you think about stable coins? Because if you recall, at the Oslo Freedom Forum, you had Alex Gladstein and Lynn Alden talking about how stable coins actually provide freedom for certain countries and certain citizens in countries, because at least it helps curtail inflation of, you know, like a Turkey that's going at 79% or a Zimbabwe that's going at almost 200%. What are your thoughts?
And obviously, well, that's what I just mentioned. I think, that's a fact, right? So I can't deny that. I mean, just the market cap alone and the usage around the world, those numbers don't lie, you know? It is an escape to an additional tool for people in those countries who don't have access, but they can get access to, I don't know, Tether or USDT or whatever it is. So yeah, that is definitely the case. However, it's not a long-term viable solution for money.
Yeah.
It's not better than Bitcoin,
Yeah.
right? For several reasons. One, there's there's still third-party risk there. Who's ever doing like the issuance of Tether and providing the collateral. I mean, they can be bankrupt already for all I know.
There's big third party.
I'm not checking their books, right? But
big third party.
compared,
Yeah.
if you're living in a country like Zimbabwe, you're like, okay, I'll take that third party risk.
Yes.
But it's not a concession we want to have in Bitcoin for sure. So that's pretty simple, straightforward to me, to be honest.
My gut tells me that there's and I know whatever, you gotta listen to your mind, but sometimes you gotta listen to your gut. Like just my initial, when I was hearing them say that, it just seemed wrong. And I don't know why. I can't put a finger on it yet. So I don't want to really go too deep into it because I just don't know why. But I just don't think, and maybe it's what you're saying, it's the third party risk that it like stablecoins can only last as long as fiat lasts. So
right.
There's an opportunity.
Like an intermediary, it's an intermediary solution. It's not,
yeah.
It's not a solution though for what Bitcoin is trying to solve.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and yeah, Bitcoin's volatility, a long time I've laughed it off because I was like, yeah, but look at the chart, it always goes up. So what if it's volatile as long as it goes up over the long term, right? But yeah, for farmers that rely on crop and rely on income, it's a serious problem to have something like drop 30% overnight. It's not, it's that is a real issue, and that's something Bitcoin has right now. I honestly believe that as the market cap of Bitcoin will grow, volatility will go down. However, I'm also aware of that Bitcoin is really just going to be reflecting the economy, right? So there's going to be bad crops. There's going to be wars in the future as well, which, like we live in a volatile world. We can try to make it less volatile, but that's not how nature works, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have the ocean, you can build a dam, and you'll you'll stop some volatility on what the water does to your country. It doesn't stop the ocean from being there and wanting to hammer down that wall. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense that well, there's two thoughts I have. Has money always been stable, or has that just been with fiat lately? And then, which I'm not sure, and I want to study into that. And then I think about too is, what about like, you're right, as Bitcoin gets more adopted, it will be more stable. And I don't know when that happens, because I think it's going to get more volatile before it gets more stable.
Yeah, whenever like fiat really collapses into Bitcoin, basically, when that explodes.
Yeah. Then that'll happen.
Right now it's so volatile because people kind of like jump in and out of it, right?
Yeah, when Bitcoin is used as a medium of exchange, that like widespread medium of exchange, I think that's when volatility breaks down, or it doesn't happen as much, because right now it's a speculative tool for most people. There's people like us that it's not speculative, and that it's an investment. It's investment savings. Or
if you have an innovation that's being adopted, right? So you kind of know the price is going to go up. And if you're a trader or a hedge fund or some big whale, you can kind of like drive that, and then just like completely try to trash the market, whether it's through news or whatever events. And there's a lot of players that are trying to make use of those human emotions, which are fear and greed, right? To make some big gains out of this. So right now, traders do, but eventually, as more and more people adopt it, it should get less volatile. I'm not saying it will, because I'm kind of more careful now with predictions and stuff. But yeah, it's gonna approach some point, I don't know, when we've reached like 60 to 70% adoption, and then yeah, a lot of that, like a lot of that trading gains and quick speculation will be gone as well, because they can probably earn a lot more trying to flip something else by that time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So
All
um,
right.
let's keep it moving forward. On to the
Yeah.
next topic. There's this article by Reuters, or Reuters. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Lynn Alden
Hooters.
shared this tweet. She said, exclusive ECB to channel cash from north to south in bid to cap spreads. Spreads are bond spreads. So she even included the picture. We can go to the article if we wanted to, but this is the main thing, is that the ECB is going to reinvest the PEP proceeds, which is the pandemic emergency plan. I don't know, the money from the pandemic emergency. That's which in their minds, we're still in the pandemic emergency. So those proceeds, where spreads have widened, where have they widened? In Italy, Spain, Portugal, and Greece. And who's going to hand that over? It's coming from Germany, France, and the Netherlands.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that as a Netherlander, a Dutchman?
Yeah, well, I don't feel anything particular because I happen to be Dutch, to be honest. I mean, I've lived in the Caribbean as well. I always consider myself a world citizen. But yeah, it is close to home, and I do know a little bit more about like the Dutch sentiment, the Nordic. We talked about this a little bit earlier, Sean. I kind of see this is like more fuel on the fire for like
Printing
a split between the northern countries and the southern countries.
Yeah.
Where the countries that have that are running a surplus, whether it's from trade or whatever, and the countries in the south that constantly running deficits, and thus basically their currency is struggling. And now the countries like Germany, the Netherlands, and the Nordics, they all have to step in and provide aid to the southern countries. But I am completely biased by the Dutch mainstream media and their news, which obviously covers our side of the story. So I'm always aware of the fact that there's an other side of the story, and I don't want to have a lot of friends in the southern parts of Europe as well. I'm sure they have a little different take on this, but yeah, the sentiment here is you can sense that, and I'm honestly afraid it's going to cause to maybe a possible, might not even be a bad thing, but a rift between North and South. But it's also like fuel on the fire for more hate between countries and peoples and stuff. And yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame.
What's weird is, like you mentioned, the North and South, like
what
these countries, like there's not a lot of snow in these southern countries, and there's quite a bit of snow in the wintertime in these other countries. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but maybe everyone's just happy at the beach in Italy, Spain, and Portugal and Greece, and they go to the beach more often.
What I don't understand from this article, though, it says that they're going to reinvest the proceeds from that emergency fund. So what are the proceeds? I mean, they printed a bunch of money.
Yes.
They loaned it out or gave it out, and are the proceeds, like, are they getting interest on those loans? Is that what they're doing? I'm not sure.
Yeah. I'm not exactly sure either. I think it's just more printed cash.
Well, our pay grade. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lynn said it's yield spread control is in action, which is almost like yield curve control, but instead of like, yield curve would be like the 2-year bond, the 5-year bond, the 10-year bond, the 30-year bond, how it goes up. And in this instance, it would be like these spreads from country to country are widening, right? The southern countries, their bonds aren't being bought. And so as their bonds aren't getting bought, they're getting cheaper and cheaper, which means their yield is going up. faster than these northern countries like Germany, France, and the Netherlands. So that's why the European Central Bank is going to take money and buy the bonds from Italy, Spain, Portugal, and Greece, so their yields don't go up too high. Because as yields go up, what it also shows is how risky of an investment it is, right? The riskier the investment, the higher the yield, because that's what risk is, yield is a measure of risk. And so that's what you're looking at. And as you look at Germany, France, and the Netherlands, those look like less risky investments. You can park your money there for a longer time. So it's not, those countries aren't going to blow up. That's kind of the idea. But the issue is you have the whole European Union, and you have the euro. So you don't want to risk, a big widening in those gaps, because it's the same currency, and you have a different, it's like, how do you measure the difference in the same currency from country to country? So I think that's what makes it hard as well. Another thing, this just came out, was that the euro, and maybe you wanted to talk about that, but I thought this kind of plays into it, was that the Eurozone inflation surges to record 8.6% in June, higher than expected. And I think that kind of ties into what's going on with these bonds from the northern countries and the southern countries of Europe.
Yeah, it's very, is palpable the right word? I'm trying to use all
Yeah,
you can feel it. You can
yes,
you can
the right
feel
word.
it, like in layman terms, right? It's like if I talk to my neighbor or anybody, and it's funny because now I could talk about inflation and they're like, oh yeah, like 4 years ago I was talking about Bitcoin and inflation, and they'll be like, oh yeah, inflation, yeah,
Right?
sure. 20 years ago things were cheaper, but it's always been that way, and it's slow. It's not too bad, but right now they're all like, oh my god, like prices I have to pay to fill up my car. When I go to the supermarket, I'm actually switching supermarkets now to go to the cheaper one, So yeah, you have these real talks where people really feel it. And that is what 8% already does. It becomes very palpable, I guess the word is.
Yes.
Tenable, what is it? Like tangible. Sorry for my English, guys.
Palpable is
Yeah.
the right word. Palpable is the right word.
Also, maybe one little thing about, and then I'll shut up about Europe, but Germany trade balance, the monthly trade balance, dropped from 20% surplus to now a -1%, a negative trade balance.
Wow.
And that's the first time since 1991, I believe, or 1990, like 24 years ago. It's yeah.
I'll just
that's pretty. And Germany is really like Germany is the engine of the European market. And this chart here looks horrible. It is mostly due to the higher energy prices. So I'm not sure what's going to happen in 2 years' time with Russia and Ukraine and the whole energy. There's a weird thing with energy, right? There's not really a shortage in energy. It's also just like these oil producing countries that are playing games and playing with capacity and reserves and whatnot. So for some reason, all these energy crises, they happen, and then all of a sudden they resolve again. And it's like, oh, wait a minute, they always told it like oil is almost finished. We only got like 5 years of reserves left. And all of a sudden the OPEC says, no, we're going to increase production by 80%. And I remember like this a couple of years back. I was like, what's going on here? It's like they can just manipulate these markets up and down and profit from it, right? I mean, just like having a money printer, if you can like influence the oil or energy prices throughout the world, you can make a lot of money. Maybe that's what Putin is doing. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe that is what he's doing. Yeah. So Germany hit a deficit. The United States, I mean, the numbers will come out pretty soon, later on this month, if we are actually in a recession. I think it's looking like everything's pointing to the fact that we are in a recession. Just the official numbers haven't come out yet. So, I mean, you look at things like that, like everything is on full tilt right now. And so it just makes sense that we would be in a recession.
Yeah. What about you? Like, are you somebody that like takes this trend and projects it out forward, or do you, so basically, okay, we're in a recession, it's going down, it's going to get worse, it's going to get even worse, and we're going to get even worse, even worse? Or do you see it as like this pendulum? You know, like, okay, we're in a recession now, that means we're almost going to be out of a recession as well.
I look at it that the Fed really has two decisions. Do they continue with their course, or with raising rates and doing quantitative tightening, trying to take money out of the market as we enter into a recession? Or do they pivot, capitulate, whatever you want to call it, and say, we need to lower rates, we got to print more money, and blame it on the pandemic still. Oh, there's more COVID cases coming out again. Whatever they want to blame it on, they can blame it on whatever. There's a war in Russia, whatever, or in Ukraine. And it, to me, what I've seen over history has shown that 100% of the time, a government will always choose to debase the currency versus going into a catastrophic depression. So that's what it seems like would happen. Now, when
so what you're saying is, you're saying it's going to be a pendulum because they're going to print more money and we're going to get some relief. The markets are going to react, bounce, but then at the same time, long term, it's just going to be this cycle of more inflation, more extreme corrections, more extreme money printing, and then
yeah, that's what I see, is a lot more inflation. And so people, and this is what makes me mad, right? When people go, oh, Bitcoin's not an inflation hedge. Well, first of all, right, you're right. Bitcoin is not an inflation hedge. It is way more than an inflation hedge. It's a new money. It's money. So it's not some asset that you just hedge inflation with. And so, but what makes me mad when people say that, they go, oh, well, look at what it's done in the last 6 months. It's like, okay, well, look what it's done in the last 2 years. You know, it's done a pretty good job against inflation in the last 2 years. So just humans, we're so, our time preference is so high. And that's the issue, is everyone wants it right now. They want the get rich quick scheme right now. It's like, no, just make your money, save it in Bitcoin, and then talk to me in 10 years. And you're gonna be like, this
it's
is
one of those
now.
I completely agree, dude. It's like those kind of arguments are so dumb. Yeah, like if you bought Bitcoin 2 or 3 years ago, you would have been up like 200%, 300% right now.
Exactly.
If you bought it 5 years ago, you're like 10,000%. It's just ridiculous. And then we have this like small intermediary drop, and you're like, oh, it's not an inflation hedge. It also reminds me of I saw this article where somebody was trying to defend Biden, I guess, or the Democrats, by saying, yeah, under Biden, Biden has reduced the deficit by the most in history. And it was a comment under this comment, and it got like the most likes and retweets, and everyone was like, yeah, I don't say this enough, but if you think about it, it's the most ridiculous argument ever. Remember, like Trump made the same stupid, similar type of like the market crashed under Trump at some point. I think it wasn't it COVID? Literally, we still had Trump in during COVID, right? When COVID broke out.
Yeah.
So the market completely tanked. Yeah, it tanked like 30 or 40%, and then it bounced, right? And that bounce was like the biggest green candle in history. And what does Trump say? The biggest, like the biggest gain in history, I own it. It was because of me. It's like, yeah, but we just fell a whole lot. And then this thing with Biden now is the same thing. Like, okay, so you created like the most massive deficit in history by printing an incredible amount of money. So the deficit was the highest of all time. The one before last candle, Sean, was the highest of all time.
2020. This is exactly what you're
2020. Yeah, the deficit grew by how much?
Look at how much
the deficit grew.
Yeah. Look at how much. And so they go, and this is right. This is people taking numbers And they totally, and I'm not pro Biden, I'm not pro Trump. Like I don't,
No,
I'm pro mathematics.
this is why
I'm
I
pro
also gave the
math.
Trump example. It's just how people manipulate
This is,
numbers to call it a
yes.
win.
So if you look
But
at
the
the US,
worst thing is that people fall for this kind of nonsense and just retweet it and parrot it like it's a real
oh,
thing. Because
yes.
it sounds like the way they word it, it sounds like they're taking away the deficit. No, they're the deficit, like the what we owe, or I'm saying we, what you guys, United States owes, is growing, right? It's growing every
Growing.
year because every year we have a deficit. So the debt is growing and growing and growing. But what they're talking about is the rate of how fast it grows. That's what he reduced, right?
Look at
But
this.
only after expanding it first massively. It's
Look,
the biggest joke.
I mean, look at this. The last time the US government had a surplus was in 2001. It's been over 20 years since the
Yeah,
US has had a
yeah.
surplus. And exactly what
On
you're saying.
paper, the United States is bankrupt. They're never going to be able to pay this back. They can
There's
only
no getting out of
inflate it.
this. Look at the surplus. It was like that's 0.5 trillion. It was like 0.05 trillion. Like 0.5 trillion. What is that? 500 billion. It was like maybe $50 billion. That was the surplus. Look at, like, how do you ever get ahead of this? You never get ahead of all of this deficit that we've built up. But if you look, and this is to your point, you go, okay, Biden can say, oh, in 2021, we had the biggest decrease in the deficit year over year in the history of the United States. That's what he says, right? The biggest decrease ever. Okay, take out the 2020 bar. Just imagine that bar right there was gone.
Not a lot to celebrate there.
In
No.
2021, the United States had the biggest bar ever in deficit in the history of the United States. Like that is where we're at. And so we're supposed to celebrate having the second biggest bar ever in the history of the United States of America as far as deficit is concerned, but it was less than it was in 2020. So this is the issue: is people just can't do math. It's simple math.
Yeah.
Or
They read a headline saying the biggest reduction in a deficit. Wow, that's commendable. Applause, please. Applause.
Yeah. And then you go look at the graph and you go, well, wait a minute. What are we talking about? We have if we took out 2020, 2021 would have been the biggest deficit in the history of the United States ever. So I guess we're not really moving in the right direction. We just printed loads of cash in 2020. So what'll be interesting to see is where this bar is in 2022, right? Will it be higher than 2021? Will it be back down to 2019 levels? You know, it's not going to be a surplus.
It looks like the stock to flow model, to be honest. I see a clear step function.
Yeah.
Only goes up.
That's true. That is stock to flow right there for you. Okay. I just wanted to share one more thing, and this isn't even Bitcoin related. This is just money related. I don't even know who this lady is. I saw her tweet and I liked it. Her name is Lisa Dinsdale, and it was just pretty poignant. It made a lot of sense to me. It just got me thinking about life, thinking about money, thinking about everything that we always think about. So she said, nobody will remember your salary, your fancy title, how busy you were, how stressed you were, how many hours you worked, which is true. No one's going to remember that. I mean, unless maybe you're Elon Musk, who knows? But people will remember the time you spent with them, how you made them feel, if you kept your promises, and if you were there for them. I just think it's important. As we talk about money all the time. We're always focused on money and Bitcoin. But the reason is to be free, to spend your time how you want to spend it, not to work harder and harder and to be stuck in some hamster wheel, to only think about getting more and more and more Bitcoin. At some point, at all points, life is much more than Bitcoin. People are the most important things. I think it's important to to recognize the freedoms that you have. If you have freedoms, be thankful for those things. Be thankful for the people around you. And Marcus, I'm thankful for you because you make it easy to talk about Bitcoin and it's fun. And I'm glad that we got like those guys in the meme factory together a few years ago because it's been cool, right? Like I didn't have anyone to talk to about Bitcoin. And with you guys, I got that. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah.
Nicely said. And I mean, it is like this. I think it's only because we're so passionate and so hopeful about the future that we're willing to be this toxic and become like these fighters almost, that we constantly feel we have to like counter the narrative and explain everybody, because it's so worth it, you know. And to be able to have something you can save that you know is not going to be stolen or inflated away from you, that just gives you peace of mind and hope for the future and allows you to spend more time on the stuff that you think is important. Yeah, we're very well said, man. I can't really add much to that, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And likewise, of course.
Yeah.
Hey, Aryi. Hey, Aryi.
I just think it's important to look at Bitcoin as freedom. It's freedom money. So don't be like, my biggest thing is don't become a slave to the thing that gives you freedom either, right? I don't know how to word it, but the whole point of being free is to be free, be ungovernable, live your life how you want to live it. And obviously, like, you don't want to be hurting anybody or do anything like that, do anything stupid. But to me, I think about people who shill the altcoins and shill whatever they got to shill, but they also have Bitcoin. And I'm like, are you really living free, or are you living to make more money? And you need to make money. You have to have money. You need to be self-sovereign, but you shouldn't be like so greedy that all you think about is getting more, because it's going to bite you in the end. One way or another, it's going to hurt you. So you got to take everything with a grain of salt, and you got to balance some way or another, and you got to find out what works for you in your life. So I guess that's how I would put it when it's all said and done. But
yeah, let's call it George, man.
Yeah. I think that's good for today.
All this free content we're putting out there, all this free alpha, and yeah.
Yep. So
gotta save some for next week, dude.
Gotta save some for next week. Yeah, and we can't give away all the secrets in one show. But that is Bitcoiners Guide episode 20. It's crazy. It's awesome that we've done this now for 20 weeks. That's almost half a year. 52 weeks in a year, so 26 weeks will be half a year. Next week is week 21. Let's try to get a guest on for that. That'll be fun. 21 million Bitcoin. So just as a reminder, Fractal Encrypt, the amazing artist. If you don't know who he is, he's the guy that built that cool thing that goes behind Saylor in a lot of his interviews. It's like that circle thing with, I don't even know what it is really, but it looks really cool. Maybe he can explain it better to us. He comes
full node.
Yeah, he joins the Meme Factory podcast this Thursday at 7:30 p.m. live on this same YouTube channel. Do not miss out.
I would love to have one of our listeners in our show next week. So if you're listening to this, hit us up in the comments. Let's just get a pleb up here and let's talk the shit. Shoot the shit.
Yes, if you're up, message us or just tweet at us if you want to join next week, and we'll get you on the show. Remember, what you see here, what you hear here, when you leave here, don't just let it stay here. Please share, like, subscribe. If you learned something, you found it helpful, spread this information out. It always helps us, and you never know who else it could help. So as for Bitcoiners Guide, episode 20 from Clan Marcus and Big Sean, we're over and out. Peace.
Later.